Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the Council of Future Conflict, episode 474. My name is Scott. I am the proprietor of the Future Conflict channel. Today, we're talking about a Ukrainian comeuppance and Latin America playing ball? Question mark. Kind of shocking, actually. It's some interesting stuff going on in the world, and we're gonna try to tune you guys into it. And just a reminder, on Friday we'll be talking domestic threats, domestic stuff. Hopefully, we'll have a guest who can help us understand the border a little better. A lot of the ICE stuff going on. One of the things that we'll mention it today, but it's kind of like it's going to happen today. I think, or they're scheduled are these 50 state protests. So we'll be talking the aftermath of that on Friday as well. So Friday should be a good show. Joe, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well and good, and
Better than yesterday, right?
better than yesterday. I'm recovering. Turned out I'm not really dying. Although yesterday it was pretty touch and go. It really
Well,
felt
you
like
were
it.
you were giving away your camo, on X. It was.
I was, and one guy said, "Can I have your cargo shorts?" I said, "You can have exactly every single pair of cargo shorts that I own."
Very
And
good.
that's when the lovely Mrs. Tactical Wisdom said, "You do own one pair." I'm like, "That's a meme pair meant for a giveaway that no one has donated enough money." So,
That's right. Very good. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better, Joe. It always sucks when you have a friend under the weather, and it's I don't get worried about the like when my friend. I guess there'll be a point in my life where like when my friends start getting sick, I'll be like, oh shit, man, like Mike's getting sick. I better send some prayers his way, because he's getting up there in years. But I'm not there yet, though. I did say a little prayer for you when I heard you weren't
whatever.
doing well.
So, for all of the Cami fans out there, Cami had an incident yesterday. It's
Oh,
been snowing for almost 50 hours here. And yesterday, she sprinted out the door, which we don't allow her outside. She sprinted out the door and tried to get away from me, but she jumped into the snow, and it's like 2 feet deep. And she immediately plunged to the center of the earth and started screaming for help. So I'm hoping that cat learned a lesson about running outside. So it was
did it
very
get
funny.
the completely covered in snow, like snow sticking to the fur thing? That's always kind of funny.
Yeah, it was hilarious. She went inside and did not go anywhere near the door for the rest of the day.
I bet your big dog likes all this.
Oh, he
You
loves it.
know,
He would stay outside if I would let him. He goes out there and lays down, and he is convinced that he's going to make the deer his friends. He'll go out there, and instead of trying to chase the deer, he stands perfectly still and tries to get them to come closer. And when they kind of prance around, he prances around back at them. He's like, I'm going to get them over here. But I'm not convinced that he's not going to rip one of their throats out when they get closer.
what
So
he didn't want to play, so I played with him in anyway.
I think that they think he's a wolf because he has yellow eyes and he's very scary looking. So
And he's big. That's my understanding, right? I have yet to encounter this dog directly, but I understand he is a big dog. Watcher, how you doing today, brother?
Doing good, doing good. Just living and dying by the grace of the United States Postal Service. And oh
Yeah,
boy, what a
no,
wonderful thing that is.
Well, I tell you, people counting on packages from China through the U.S. Postal Service or SOL, based
Facts,
on
facts,
recent reporting.
facts. But yeah, I've had waiting on chicks in the mail at the moment is how I'm doing.
Yeah.
55 that are supposed to be here, but they appear to have just kind of arrived in St. Paul and then stayed in St. Paul. So we'll see
I
what
saw a
happens.
great meme about that. It said, "Why are you trying to track the package? It's in God's hands now."
Well, yeah, C. Westby over there on a Rumble says, "I can't wait till they, I can't wait till they audit the
So
USPS."
my entire business runs on the USPS, right? And it's crazy how many temporary price increases there have been that have turned out to then be permanent and have more added on. The cost of shipping even media mail is now pretty ridiculous.
Facts. Facts. It's gone up substantially over the last 2 years.
Yeah, what do you think the raise? That's like 50% price increase or something along those lines.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, right now, Media Mail, when I first started mailing books, was $3.17 for a single book. It's now over $5.
Well, yep, it's a thing, So what are you gonna do? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about. Actually, before we jump into our first odds and ends, Joe, we don't really have it on the list here today, but let's talk about the protests that are scheduled for today. In the an idea of future conflict. What do you know? What's the kind of 5 W's about these protests?
Well, there are protests allegedly in all 50 state capitals, including Helena, Montana, which I doubt will have a very big turnout. But protests in all 50 state capitals for impeachment. I don't really know what they want to impeach him for, or if they know how impeachment works. It doesn't work by protest, but that's what they plan on doing. But it's a continuation of the ICE protests. And I imagine that now they'll be throwing the Gazan element into it after the really ridiculous comments that Trump made about Gaza yesterday. So it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of build on, we're going to just turn this into an impromptu odds and ends. I think we're going to have a lot more on this, by the way, on Friday, assuming there will be that they actually turn out, right? But I don't know. There may be some fair weather friends not showing up, but we'll see. Plan-resistant protests opposing Donald Trump. Early actions are gaining traction online with demonstrations planned in all 50 states on Wednesday, organized under the hashtag Build the Resistance. What is it? And hashtag 5051, representing 50 protests, 50 states, one day. The demonstrations will take place at state capitals and other locations nationwide on February 5th. The protesters have issued a set of demands to President Trump. And so let me read the demands here. Donald Trump and his administration need to address to the American people and own up to his lies and acknowledge the harm caused by his administration. Wow, he's only been in office like a month now. Actually, not even a month. Our coalition calls for the immediate actions to rectify the injustices perpetrated by the current leadership and restore integrity and fairness to our political system. I'm not quite sure how the president can just magically do this, but, hey, whatever. We demand transparency, accountability, and the prioritization of human rights and equality. Our requests include resignation or removal of Donald Trump from the president. Well, he's going to say no to that. So, well, you asked me to resign. Well, I might as well resign because you asked me to, not even nicely. Thorough investigations into his employees, scrutiny of Elon Musk's governmental role. I tell you what, guys, they're just freaking out over Elon Musk. And I mean, I was always pretty skeptical of like, how does this Doge thing work, right? But if the amount of caterwauling by the left is any indication, he's been very effective.
Yeah, it's been crazy. This tells you how much stuff USAID has been funding. Maybe we won't have protests because USAID isn't able to send them a check.
Yeah, well, we'll be talking a little bit about USAID in the last segment today, but yeah, that's 50 states.
So I'll be honest, my grandfather used to work for USAID, but we all knew he was a spy. So there is that.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody today, and he was really concerned because I think he knew some people who were, on the dark side of USAID, back in the day. And he's like, he was really worried about if they tear this apart, people getting access to the, all these people's, stuff. I was like, but yeah, the problem is not what maybe some of the good ideas that came up behind USAID and, during the Cold War and stuff like that. But it's what it's become now. And even if there's 5% of that left, that's not very much baby and a whole lot of bathwater,
Yep.
So anyway, if you're out and about today, keep this in mind.
And hey, if you happen to get any video, we'd be more than happy to see it. So
yeah, for share, if you get any video of any of this kind of stuff, post it on X and then tag us and let us know about it, and we'll make sure we spread it around. All right, let's jump into our first odds and ends today. China hits back as Trump tariffs go into effect. I mean, let's be honest. Most people I can't even believe that this is even happening, right? It's like, these are the kind of boasts that, nobody's actually going to do this,
Yeah. And yet, here it is.
And yet, here we go. Beijing announced a broad package of economic measures targeting the United States on Tuesday, hitting back after United States President Donald Trump imposed a 10% tariff on Chinese imports. The fresh duties announced by Chinese Minister of Finance levy a 15% tax on certain types of coal and liquefied natural gas and a 10% tariff on crude oil, agricultural machinery, large displacement cars, and pickup trucks. The measure will take effect on February 10th. The Minister of Commerce and China's Customs Administration also announced new export controls effective immediately on more than 24 metal products and related technologies. Those include tungsten, a critical mineral typically used in industrial and defense applications, as well as tellurium, which can be used to make solar cells. The ministry said that he was adding two American firms, biotech company Lumina and the fashion designer PVH Group, owner of Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, to its unreliable entities list, saying they violated normal market trading. Is that because they closed down their sweatshops in the Uyghur Muslim areas of?
I doubt it. But here's the thing that's silly about this. Go back and look at what tariffs China already
had, right,
on American products, and you realize this is all just nonsense because they've always tariffed us, and we chose not to because we're the bigger person in this. We're really just getting the reciprocal tariffs.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing, right? All of these countries have been ripping us off for years, yet everybody's up in arms when we decide to play the same game they're playing.
Yeah.
And America is the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to the economy, right? I mean, it's a big economy. Plus, we grow when, like Europe's been flat for the last, 4 years, 10 years, something like that. Whereas America's literally doubled the size of our economy in the same time Europe's just maintained its size. So, we're the only country in the world that consistently has a dynamic economy. So it's kind of interesting. Let me get back at this story here a little more. We are surprised and deeply disappointed to learn the decision from the Chinese Commerce Ministry. This is from the PVH spokesperson said, in 20 years of operating in China, U.S. companies should not be surprised when they get hit for this kind of stuff. We thought everything was fine in China. No, I mean, it's like they can't see the forest for the trees, or they are just have their head buried in the sand and are unwilling to see the desert that surrounds them. In a separate statement, China's State Administration for Market Regulation said it was initiating an investigation into Google for suspected violation of its anti-monopoly. The company, whose search engine is not available in China, has minimal operations in the country. Well, shocking. How can you be a monopoly in China when you don't even operate in the country? The raft of announcements come as a broad-based 10% tariff on Chinese imports to the United States announced by the White House on Saturday came into effect. China's measures appear to vary in their potential impact on the U.S. economy and businesses. For example, China is the leading global producer of tungsten concentrates, representing more than 80% of the world production, according to U.S. government estimates from 2020. The tariffed items, however, will represent a relatively small proportion of the overall bilateral trade. The measures are fairly modest, at least relative to U.S. moves, and have clearly been calibrated to try to send a message to the United States and domestic audiences without inflicting too much damage. And this is what it comes down to, Joe. And we saw this in direct contrast to, Canada and Mexico, they need us way more than we need them. I mean,
That's true.
Don't get me wrong. Canada and the U.S. are huge trade partners. Same with Mexico. But ultimately, we've kind of got them over a barrel, like literally. And I hate to say it, but China's kind of in the same boat. One of the things that they tried to start doing during the previous Trump administration was to diversify. Like they were so focused on trading with the U.S. that if we, basically cut them off, then they would 80% of their goods would just sit there and not go anywhere. So they're trying to broaden their markets, but I don't know how effective that's been. Joe, I mean, for you, when you hear about this tariffs and trade wars and things like that, as far as effects to you directly, do you fear that, or is there just some kind of niche business stuff that you think is really where it's going to hit?
All that it's really going to do is raise the prices up. For example, there was some comment about the USPS ban on packages from China. It's just going to drive them to FedEx, DHL, and UPS, which is going to raise your end cost because you're going to have to pay for that shipping increase. Or they'll do the same thing they've always done. Like when Motorola was bought out by a Chinese company, they decided to simply move the factory to Malaysia and ship the stuff to ban to get around the ban on Chinese radios, right?
Yeah.
They're Chinese radios. They're just made in Malaysia. Or the solar panels that you're not allowed to import from China that are now being imported from Vietnam. They're still made in China. They're just shipped across the border to Vietnam and then sent. That's all that's going to happen. They're just going to shuffle things around, go to the next country nearby that they control or have a hand in controlling, and ship it from there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways to kind of get around things like this. But let's be honest, a 10% tariff is not the end of the world. That's a 10% on the kind of wholesale retail price, not the. So let's say something is $10, right? And the wholesale price is $10. Well, then it makes it $11, right? Because it's a 10% addition. But what's the retail price? Well, $30. It's a $30 item. It costs the company, 20. Let's say it's a Baofeng radio. It costs them $10, and they sell it for $30. But it increases by $1, so then it's $11. They still can sell it for $30 and make a good profit. Now that's on stuff with a fairly decent markup. I know there are items like petroleum products and things like that that have a very small markup as a percentage of its total price. So the impacts would be greater there. But ultimately, this is not the end of the world.
Yep.
All right, and let's be honest. If you're a fan of getting rid of the income tax, your future lies in tariffs and sales tax. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, best part about Montana, no sales tax. It's been pretty awesome.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I'm looking at Tennessee as a place to settle after after I leave Korea, because no income tax and but there's just a sales tax. So it's kind of a trade-off, right? Yeah. All right. Watcher, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah. Good stuff. There's so much winning. You're almost sick of it. I don't know what else to say. Like legitimately, there's a lot of good news coming from every quarter. No, I mean, like anything that makes it harder to trade with these Chinese companies. I'm sorry. I used to be one of these like free trade above all guys, but that's before I truly understood how it could be used as a weapon. It can and has been being used as a weapon. So
yeah. You got to look at who your trading partners are before you start calling it free trade. So I'm just looking. I was almost sick of winning a little bit last week, guys, but I thought about it today, and I've decided I'm still fine with all the winning. you know. Lance Corporal Veteran for $5 says, supposedly the deal Canada and Mexico made with Trump was the same one they made with the Biden administration. I don't think that's the case. We already saw some significant increases of Mexican posture. Well, we're going to talk about that later in the second segment. So in the kind of Central America, Latin America segment. So we'll talk a little more about that. All right, let's move on. So Joe, I know we're kind of inside the 48 hours on things like this, but I can only imagine some of the things that are going to come out of this shooting. And then right before the show, we got reports of another shooting in Belgium. So we're going to cover both of these. So what do we know about the Sweden school shooter? So on Tuesday afternoon, the gunman behind Sweden's worst ever mass shooting paced up and down through the corridors of the Bergska Adult Education Center. His steps could be heard outside the classroom of Helen Werma, a 35-year-old nursing student. We heard 3 shots, one after another, in panic. My teacher said, shut the doors, lock them, and hide. The police have revealed few details about the suspected killer. Well, I wonder why, Joe. I wonder why they're not telling us all what his name is, what he looks like, who he is, where he's from, what part of Sweden. You know, maybe he comes from a more aggressive area in Sweden. Maybe
he's from the south.
Yeah, he's from the south. Yeah. The southern Swedish city of Aleppo, maybe, or someplace around there. Police have reviewed few details about the suspected killer, who was amongst the 11 people who died. But local media paint a picture of a reclusive who lived locally with legally owned weapon. Oh, interesting. I hadn't heard that the weapon was legally owned.
That's got to be false, because it was a fully automatic rifle, and that is not legal to own in Sweden at all.
Yeah, that's what I had heard too. I was being a little legal. What? What are the suspect's motives? The suspect was unknown to the police, and they believed he acted alone. Officers say he had no links to gangs, and it's thought that he acted without an ideological motive. They do not believe the attack was motivated by terrorism. It's a changing situation. The information we gave earlier is still valid, but may change later. It's almost like they know.
If they say we don't believe it was terrorism, that means there's some possibility that it is.
Right.
And if his name was Michael Johansson, they wouldn't have any reason to believe that.
Yeah. In fact, they would be happy it wasn't a Muslim terrorist. They'd be like, "Oh, don't worry, it's just he's a death metal fan named Sorensen or something like that." With officers attending the scene were shot at, he added that none were injured. The police found the suspect dead, and Mr. Forrest said it appeared that he had killed himself. In an interview with a local tabloid, a relative said the suspect says he had not had much contact with family in recent years and was unemployed. As a child, he was different but lively. He did well at school. So, I mean, who knows? This guy very well could be Swedish. That being said, Joe, let's give absolute benefit of the doubt, right? Because there's a couple things in here that point to me that he's probably a long-term Sweden resident and not somebody who's a Johnny-come-lately. But that being said, Joe, I didn't think that they had mass shootings and things like that in Europe. I thought that the gun control was supposed to solve all that.
Hey, Sweden, the home of the grenade attack, having a mass shooting, shock.
Right. Wild. Well, it's probably. I'm just glad it wasn't a grenade attack. You know, I mean, maybe that's what the response is.
Oh, it says right there, automatic.
Yeah. Let's see. Police said 11 people had died, including the suspected gunman. Health authorities said 3 women, 2 men were in stable yet critical condition from gunshot wounds. How did the attack unfold? Police received warning of a shooting taking place. The shooting was in the campus a school for adults known as a Comeuppance in Swedish, which is primarily for people who did not finish primary or secondary education. There are other schools on the campus. The teachers have described hearing shots ring out. I saw people dragging injured out, first one, then another. I realized it was very serious. There were shots, first in succession, a short pause, and a few more. Is this a video? Oh, this is.
I'm sorry.
I mean, it might not be. It's definitely a semi-auto.
Well, the police say it was full auto, and the TV news says it was semi-auto. There's no reason why Swedish TV, which is state-owned, would lie, right?
Yeah, that sounded a little suspicious right there. Like he was maybe doing a controlled burst, like a very, like he knew what he was doing. I'm curious about the gun laws in Sweden. If like, you know, people can, let's see, can people in Sweden own, what would you say is, you know, semi-automatic rifles? Let's see what the answer is here. So they can have legal ownership of semi-automatic rifles. Include AR-15 style weapons were made legal for the hunting in Sweden after changes by the environmental. However, these rifles, here we go, a maximum magazine capacity of 5 + 1 round. So basically, 6-round magazine. So that was way more than 6 rounds. So he was definitely breaking the magazine rule. And let's see, you have to be a member of a hunting or shooting club. Firearms license is required. And yeah, I mean, they have generally restrictive gun laws. So, I mean, you know, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. This is just a Swedish guy who loses the plot and decides to take his weapon and do stupid stuff with it. Well, I mean, they've got all the gun control in the world, and yet here this is happening. So it's, you know, gun control is not going to keep this stuff from happening. All right. Let's move on. So this one, the next one here is looking what, I mean, this is a little more obvious what it is because we actually have video of the attack. And I'm going to show the video because it doesn't appear to be overtly violent or, you know, there's no kind of people getting, you know, murked or anything like that. So this is from a tweet from about an hour ago by Ian Miles Chung, detestable human being, but he has the video. 2 armed gunmen walked into Brussels subway station this morning and fired into a crowd with automatic weapons and dispersed some kind of small explosives. They appear to spare the life of a Muslim woman. Now, these guys are definitely... can you play the audio, Watcher? I'm kind of curious to... I would assume that these are obviously automatic weapons. But...
There's not much audio, but yeah.
Oh, it's a... Oh, you can't hear the... Yeah, but they're clearly automatic weapons. And it looks like an AK, like what is it? A Romanian AK with the gangster grip on it. Is what it looks like. What is it? AMD 63? That's what it looks like. The most crap version of the AK ever. And the other one looks like it might be like maybe an AR, but it's kind of hard to see from the back. So this happened just you know before in Brussels. So not a whole lot of details on this, Let me see if I can find a more up-to-date source on any facts. So it's 2 men, automatic weapons, middle of, and here's let's see. Yeah, using AK-47 style rifles. Wow. Well, probably from the southern city of Damascus, the southern Belgian city of
Hama. Yeah.
Damascus. Hama, yeah, Homs, yeah. Maybe Aleppo. Maybe he's come. He's from the northern city of Aleppo.
But he's wearing a North Face jacket, so he probably goes on many adventures.
I know, right? He's clearly completely oppressed. Belgian police have lost a manhunt following the shooting in Brussels around 6:15 a.m. Local time. Authorities are investigating the incident with details emerging from local media reports. So we'll probably hear more of this in the near future. And I hope this doesn't end up being a pattern. That would, and because Joe, do you want to share that? Watcher, actually, Watcher, in our CFC chat, Joe dropped an image that potentially could.
We take the super chat down because it's limiting our screen.
So. Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
This might have something to do with it. Let me open this up so I can read it. Here we go. To the Mujahideen in the heart of Europe and America. He says the part at the bottom says, this is a call and incitement to all those supposed Mujahideen in the heart of Europe and America behind their lines. Do not consult anyone regarding your transcontinental jihad. Monitor the most substantial targets and strike relentlessly, for the blood of all Christians from pole to pole does not avenge a single drop of Muslims' blood spilled every day. I mean, this just goes to the utter contempt that they feel towards Christians. Anybody who says that Muslims consider Christians people of the book.
I think the more accurate thing is all non-Muslims, if we're quite honest with ourselves.
This is true. The attacks are a part of their revenge, but not all of it. So make them continuous, not limited to time or date. Oh boy, fun times indeed.
Yeah, and this incident is so developing that we don't have the details on numbers of injured or killed or damaged, and we don't know yet. It just happened. So
so this and the only reason why we're even kind of reporting it is because the video, it was very clear as to what happened, as far as who the shooters were, but also this will be something we'll touch on again on Friday, I'm sure. God help us, we don't have any more of these kind of attacks like copycats or anything like that, or some sort of a coordinated effort from an organization like Al Qaeda. All right, gentlemen, anything else you want to cover in the odds and ends today?
This might seem a little crazy and out there, but hey, maybe those Muslims aren't a good idea to just bring them all in unvetted. Weird, right?
Strange. Weird,
right? Maybe listen to what they say, right? Maybe they're telling you the truth when they're speaking in their mosques. And of course, this is not all Muslims, but yes, it is definitely the political Islamists. All right, Joe, tactical-wisdom.com. You want to talk a little bit about what you got going on this week?
I've got the same stuff going on I had earlier. Because I'm sick, I've got nothing going on.
Well, the interesting, so I don't know if this is something you've ever covered before, but people are going to get sick in a world without law, and in the kind of
I've been thinking about that over the last couple of days. Like, what's your plan? Are you stockpiling cold medicine? How do you stop an operation? You're on a 2-week operation. How do you stop for somebody who's very, very sick and can't move?
Yeah.
because yesterday I physically could not move. So,
Well, I mean, you're gonna have the seasonal stuff that you have even when the world with law is going. But when your water sources and your food sources start to become a little suspect, you're gonna have a lot more gastrointestinal problems. You're gonna have vomiting. You're gonna have things that literally can become debilitating if it gets bad enough.
what I think is funny is that our Americans' susceptibility to water overseas is because we overtreat our water and we make it not natural, right? We're not
Right.
used to natural water, and I think that's part of the problem. The other thing, though, is stockpile cold medicine. People might say, "Oh, but the expiration dates." Expiration dates have to do with efficacy, not with it becomes poison and bad for you. There have been studies done where medicine that was up to 10 years outdated was still 95% effective. So stockpile cold medicine, stockpile things like that.
Yeah, then that's a great point. Another good example is antibiotics have, especially pill form, have a much longer kind of real shelf life than the expiration date. I talked to a doc before. I was like, I've got these Cipro, but they're like 5 years out of date. He's like, hold on to them. God forbid something happens. Out of date Cipro is way better for you than nothing. He said, but then again, he said it does get to be a point of diminishing returns. So he's like, I think
Be
he said,
Prepared's comment on Rumble is relative is related.
yeah, let's pull this up. But cold and flu meds are in my medic bags for this reason. Saw it in a book once. Can't remember who wrote it though. Some guy, Dilo or Domino, something.
Something. That guy's crazy. So
real
yeah,
quick.
Go ahead.
What is it? It was book 6, right? It was the medical book.
No, book 5.
Book 5. Okay, so I'm sorry. Book 6 is the one you're working on right now.
Correct.
What do you kind of recommend in somebody's kind of go bag? What's the kind of the meds that you would recommend everybody kind of carry?
Well, what's funny is everyone wants to get all the high speed stuff for things, but a combat pill pack. You know what pain relievers in a combat pill pack? Tylenol. It's just 1,500 milligrams, right? Because you're not going to give a dude a gun and give him Vicodin or Percocet, right? You're going to give him Tylenol. So Tylenol, cough drops are a big one. I know Be Prepared just mentioned it because pretty much if you're patrolling, you should be sucking on a cough drop the whole time so that you're not tempted to cough and make noise. Some type of a basic antihistamine because I have allergic reactions to all kinds of things in the field. And antihistamines can help.
Yeah, there's your Benadryl right there. Yeah,
right. Saran put it on there. Benadryl's a big one. Aspirin is good, but the problem for carrying aspirin in the field is that it is a blood thinner. So you have to balance that. Right. I don't want to.
I'm a fan of both like ibuprofen and Tylenol for kind of field work. Like the old with the Motrin horse pills that they give you is a good all around.
The Motrinates, yeah. That was a Navy doc's mantra. Take a Motrinate, change your socks, drink a canteen of water.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we used to drop Motrin like that before a long like 12-mile rush march or something like that. So it was like prophylactic, and it actually helped.
Well, it's an anti-inflammatory, so that does work that way.
So yeah, it's definitely, if you haven't checked out book 5. Actually, you know what? Do we have let's see if we could drop a link real quick to book 5.
I'll get it because I want to use my. I might as well make a penny or two off of it.
All right, yeah, go ahead and drop your link there, and we'll give people. So if you want a good kind of all around, let's be honest, a world without doctor kind of guide. This is it. If I remember correctly, Joe, not only do you give advice, but you actually point people in the direction of more expansive reading, if I remember correctly, don't you?
Yes, there's a lot of good things. There's a good book by I can't remember, but I recommend it in there. A couple good first aid books that are in there. Who's the one doctor who does a lot of preparedness stuff? I'm trying to see the books over here. I don't know. I give a bunch of lists, so
Well, like
for
one of the
some reason,
ones that I really appreciate was Where There Is No Dentist. I think there's Where There Is No Doctor and Where There Is No Dentist.
and where there is no dentist, yeah.
Those are pretty harrowing, if I'm honest. Like, because it really talks about how to like get in the nitty gritty of dental care and things like that. So that was pretty good. A
For
good
some reason,
flask
my
of
book is
whiskey.
not coming up at all today.
Lance Corporal Veteran for $5 says all common pain, flu, cold meds effectiveness reduces over time in long-term storage. Don't store aspirin long-term; it's poisonous. Yeah, I've heard that about aspirin. But then again, you tend to just eat aspirin like bonbons. A flask of whiskey is good in the go bag, but not the chest rig or battle belt. Yes, that's a good point there.
Malort. I'm telling you, Malort
My
will
lord.
cure you from the inside out.
I'm more of a traditionalist with the bourbon, bourbon in a
No,
flask.
no. I think Joe's got a point here. If it's Malort, you're not going to drink it unless you actually need
Yeah, you
it.
don't get more traditionalist than Wormwood, right?
I know, but I'm just saying,
Anyway, I'm sorry,
it's
Washer. Go
I'm
ahead.
talking. I was talking like traditional American, Where is Bullwort from anyway? Is that a liqueur?
No, it's terrible stuff.
It's an
It's not even a
abomination.
liqueur.
Yeah,
It is an
So it's
abomination. But it is good
Jepson's
for
Bullwort.
yes, that's it.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on, shall we, gentlemen? We've got our main topic for today is the Ukrainian comeuppance. They're fighting, but unfortunately, they don't have a whole lot of guys to fight with, right? I heard somebody with a lot of years of experience today say, "Well, when somebody with 3 times the number of people as you is willing to lose the same number of people that you're willing to lose, then eventually you're going to run out of money, guys before they're going to run out of guys." And that's that'll be all she wrote, which I absolutely agree with that. And we're looking at the potential fall of Pokrovsk, which is that key city on the Donbass line. This is a BBC article. It's like hell. Race to evacuate residents from Ukraine frontline city, and this is Pokrovsk we've been talking about since late last year. As he prepares to set off on another rescue mission, on Ukraine's eastern front, 35-year-old Anton Yarmoluk is grateful for the fog. It will shield him and his colleague from Russian drones hunting from the skies. His armored van will provide more protection, but only up to a point. Every journey could be the last. In December, shrapnel from a drone attack ripped through clearly marked armored vehicle used by his team, causing injuries but no deaths. We are extremely lucky. Anton's regular destination these days in the industrial city of Pokrovsk, which he says is being attacked night and day. Russian forces are closing in, are less than 2 kilometers away. The last few days we were coming in, there was hell. They are around 7,000 people still there. We'll try to get some people out of that nightmare. He's been doing that since Moscow's invasion in February 2022. Joe, I mean, this. I hate I enjoy these kinds of stories because it's about civilians helping civilians, right? It's like they're trying to evacuate people out of these frontline cities. Why people stick around? It's hard to understand. They're attached to their home, and sometimes it's just as simple as that. Other times they're old and infirm and are unable to kind of get up and go. And so, this is the kind of bravery I can appreciate. That said, this is a sad story that we've seen many times, whether it was Bakhmut, Avdiivka, there are Severodonetsk, there were all these cities that were, going to hold out, but eventually Ukrainian forces were pushed out and they were taken over by the Russians. This is going to continue to happen until eventually somebody steps up and does something about it. Let's say Ukraine has already lost the output from the crucial coal mine in the area. The only coking coal for the steel industry. Operations were suspended last month because of the Russian advance. So before they set off, there's a warning: when we park, get out of the vehicles and don't stand nearby in case they are targeted. The closer we get, the more explosions we'll hear. War has left its mark, draining the city of life. Streets are deserted. Houses are boarded up. Some buildings have been flattened. There's no smoke from chimneys on snow-capped roofs. We pass by a parked car with a white flag. And then it just kind of tells the story of him going in and picking people up. These pictures are just grim. These pictures look cold. I would not want to be in Ukraine. You couldn't pay me to be there, if I'm honest. And so and based on the images, he's getting out 75-year-old women. Old women is pretty much what he's helping. So this is good to see that people are doing this, but unfortunately, this will have to continue until somebody can make a peace deal.
I'm going to point out the obvious here that it would still be cold in Ukraine in January, even if there wasn't
without
a
war
going on. And
but that makes
she
it
does
even
not
colder.
appear to be dirty or suffering any. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's the idea, right? Get them out before they do have to suffer and whatnot. But
one would hope, unlike they've done in several other cities.
Exactly right. I mean, the problem is that the Ukrainians have this kind of siege mentality, and they don't want a lot of the civilians to just, flee. They put controls on the roads and things like that. So it's, kind of, let's be honest with you, it's kind of dark when you intentionally keep cities and people in these cities. All right.
If your town, your city has dirt roads, it's a town, not a city.
I don't know. I get the feeling that almost all of these cities in the Donetsk area have these kind of roads. But that's the difference between the rest of the world and places like this. All right. So I thought that would be a good scene setter for our discussions, because now we're going to talk about the deal, right? Is Zelensky ready to make a deal? Zelensky tells Piers Morgan he's ready to negotiate directly with Putin in a major reversal. So this is something, this is one of those kind of things, Joe. He said he was never going to do. And then, of course, now he's doing it. There's a lot of that going around these days, it seems like. I'll never do that. And then they do it. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky has told British journalists, I don't know if you could call Piers Morgan a journalist, that he would agree to direct talk with Putin to end the country's nearly 3-year-long war. Morgan asked him how he would feel if he sat opposite of Putin at a negotiating table, to which Zelensky responded, "If that is the only setup in which we can bring peace to the citizens of Ukraine and not lose people, definitely we will go set up." But noted that other participants would need to be present. So while it was somewhat of an imagined theoretical scenario, it was the first time Zelensky has ever responded with a positive answer or expressed a willingness to such a proposition. Zelensky has never so much as theoretically acknowledged that he's ready to sit at the negotiating table. Imagine, Joe, if Zelensky had Trump on his side and Putin had Xi on his side. When the doors close of that negotiation, it would be all three of them looking at Zelensky and being like, "Okay, are you going to go live in Egypt or are you going to go live in London? Because you're not staying, no matter what happens." I mean, talk about the cats, the mouse surrounded by a bunch of cats. What do you think about this, Joe? I mean, this is kind of a big deal because he's saying I would never talk to him, blah blah blah. He would have to do all these things before I would ever sit down, and basically he would only approach Putin if he could do so as a victor. This is a major reversal, no?
It is a major reversal only because now the money has dried up. He knows it. He can't milk it or fleece it for anything further. So now he's going to pretend like he's always been pursuing peace. This is always what I've wanted. I'm just trying to get here, and those crazy Brits wouldn't let me do it before. The guy's a grifter and a lot of things, but right now he's just trying to find the best out. But he's trying to get a voice at the table because the United States and Russia are talking about it, and both are saying the same thing, that the only way peace comes is with Zelensky gone. So,
yeah. Yeah, and JSUP has got it exactly right. Like we discussed here on CFC, we stopped giving dollars to Ukraine, and the war is over in 2 weeks. That's exactly right. I mean, because they're basically that junkie brother who won't stop doing drugs until you stop giving him money. But I just gave him money for dinner. Well, he doesn't want dinner; he wants drugs. While it's somewhat of an imagined theoretical scenario, it was the first time Zelensky's ever responded with a positive answer or expressed a willingness to such a proposition. Zelensky has never so much as theoretically acknowledged that he's ready to sit at the negotiating table when asked in prior media interviews. This still marks an apparent shift, given that how thoroughly throughout the war, Zelensky has completely ruled out direct negotiations with Moscow so long as Putin is still in power. But recently, Zelensky suggested this ban applies to all Ukrainian officials except for himself in wake of the 2022 decree declaring it impossible to engage with the Kremlin so long as Putin holds the Russian presidency. Putin last week highlighted the prior legislation in Kiev, saying it's possible to negotiate with anyone. However, due to his illegitimacy, Zelensky has no right to sign anything. If he wishes to participate in talks, I will deploy people who will conduct such negotiations. Zelensky, in a newly published interview with Piers Morgan, also said, "I will not be kind to him. I consider him an enemy." Okay, so what? You think that Putin would be worried about listening to your invective from across the table? Can you imagine the look Putin would give Zelensky as Zelensky tries to dress him down? He'd be like, "And let's get on to it."
I think Zelensky's afraid to be in the same room with him.
Oh, I think so too. Well, Zelensky's scared shitless of going out of power because he knows as soon as he's not the president, he's got a real fucking target on his back.
Well, this is going to be an unpopular thing to say, but certain guys, Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Sergei Lavrov, Donald Trump, these guys have the power of presence. They have a command presence and an aura about him. Zelensky does not. Zelensky exudes weakness, and he does not want to be seen in those rooms with any of them.
Well, in his dress, I mean, we've made fun of his clothing from the day one of the war. His dress absolutely reflects that. You know what I mean? You know, his 5'11" pants and tactile sweatshirts.
It's beta male. Let me look tough because I'm not actually tough.
That's exactly right. Let's see. I guess let's look at
By the way, he probably gets an endorsement money from 511. I'm not even lying.
You're probably not wrong. The fact that the Taliban wear 511 clothes, I mean,
yeah.
Let's watch a little bit of this video clip. It's about a minute long to see what old Zelensky has to say here.
If we move forward to potentially this peace summit with the four groups, as you say, how are you going to feel sitting opposite Vladimir Putin at a negotiating table? Do you think you can do that, given how you feel about him?
Якщо це буде єдина
if
конференція,
that is the only setup in which we can bring peace to the citizens of Ukraine and not lose people,
ідемо фігурацію.
definitely we will go for this setup for the meeting with these 4 participants. What does it matter what is my attitude to him? I will not be kind to him, and I believe that I consider him an enemy. And to be honest, I believe he considers me an enemy as well. That's it.
Well, I mean, I think that is true, but I mean, one is an enemy who's winning, and one is the enemy who's holding on by the skin of his teeth, and has not been democratically reelected since the war started. All right. Let's see. Zelensky says, "Give us back nuclear arms," while discussing a scenario on how Ukraine could end. Yeah, that's not going to fucking happen. Zelensky also reiterated his long-time stance that Ukraine must be admitted to NATO and have firm security guarantees to prevent any future Russian invasion. The only way to prevent any future Russian invasion of Ukraine is to have them declare neutrality and never become a member of NATO, and a moratorium of at least 20 years on exploring EU membership even. That's it. I mean, and the sad thing is, Joe, when we saw the buildup, coming. Remember, what was it? Was it Kazakhstan that had the where the Russian troops went into Kazakhstan right before?
It was delayed the Russian action in
it was November, December. At the same time that was happening, we were watching those rail cars, and I remember on the show, it was me, you, Mike, who else was on there?
Stan.
I guess it was Stan and old Grumpy himself were on the show, and it was the.
He's talking about you,
Ron. I'm sorry. Well, he's grumpy because he won't come on the show. He's too busy substitute teaching and all this kind of stuff. Patrick. No, not Patrick. But it was because this was before Ukraine, and nobody knew who Patrick was until he started grifting off of Ukraine. So you remember, it was during that time we started seeing there was a military exercise in the Don Rostov-on-Don region of Russia, and we started talking about that military exercise could very well be cover for action to get the things in place to go into Ukraine. Well, the thing that tipped me off, and I think I brought this up, and I think you guys all agreed with me, was that when we saw not the missile launchers, for the what's not the Zircon missile? What's the other one? What's the Iskander? The Iskander missile, the reloads for the Iskander missiles on train cars. So it was just an entire train full of Iskander reloads. I was like, that's something big.
For me, it was the arrival of whole blood.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned
blood has a very short shelf life in the field, and when blood started arriving, the game was on.
Yeah, and they were setting up field hospitals and things like that down in Crimea and places like that. So yeah, there was, but when all that stuff was going on, I said, listen, Zelensky can stop this today, and and it's exactly the things that we're laying out here, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the other thing we said too is Zelensky's got to he's got to get going. He can't stick around. Putin won't allow Zelensky to remain president.
If Zelensky's so popular, let him hold an election.
Amen, brother.
Let the people decide.
So Putin would definitely negotiate. Zelensky says he would negotiate, and now we have a reason for the Americans to get involved. Now, Trump is always an opportunist, whether it's about Greenland and their mineral exploration, or it's Panama and the canal, or it's any other kind of there's always something to the things that Trump kind of puts his finger on and says, I'm willing to kind of expend some capital for that, right? This next story here kind of expands on what that could be. Trump's interest in Ukraine's rare earth minerals might backfire on Zelensky. Trump has confirmed his interest in Ukraine's rare earth minerals as being interpreted by some as a beneficial to Zelensky amidst uncertainty about his commitment to Ukraine. One of the points from Zelensky's so-called victory plan calls for letting the country's allies extract its critical minerals. New Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently warned of the strategic advantage that China derives from its control over the rare earth mineral supply chain, so he might have influenced Trump's view on the issue. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham raised awareness of Ukraine's critical mineral riches during his trip there last June, after he claimed that they're sitting on $10 to $12 trillion worth of such wealth. Trump 2.0's foreign policy focus, more muscularly containing China in all that is particularly predisposed of him to appreciate the aforementioned point that Zelensky's victory plan. The problem, though, is that the bulk of Ukraine's critical mineral wealth is under Russian control right now, and Ukrainian forces are continuing to retreat. At the same time, the special envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg's words about how Ukraine needs to hold its long-delayed elections were seen as Trump's interest in brokering a ceasefire. Now, that's interesting, Joe. I have not heard anybody from the Trump administration talking about holding Zelensky's feet to the fire. I mean, let's think about it. How can somebody who's not democratically elected have any kind of a mandate to make a long-term peace deal with Russia? I mean, you would have to have some sort of mandate from the people in order to do that.
Well, he says he does. He got it at one point a long time ago.
A long time ago, but then he pushed pause on that man. I'm just going to hold the mandate from.
I was elected once. Now it's over. I know another guy who did that. He had a similar problem in his country. So,
well, we let's be honest. Vladimir Putin has kind of done that, So
Vladimir Putin is wildly popular and continues to win elections.
That's true. He is legitimately popular.
I'm referring to someone with a lot more in common with Ukraine, Adolf Hitler.
Oh, Adolf Hitler. Yeah. Well, free and fair elections, right? Democracy is all
wrong. Vladimir Putin is wildly popular amongst Russians. Sure, there are some protesters. There's going to be in every nation. You're going to have opposition, but Vladimir Putin is popular amongst the Russian people in general.
Weirdly less protesters now that USAID's out of business. It's odd how that worked out.
Well,
crazy, right?
Enough, we're definitely gonna talk about that. But Joe, the interesting thing is, of course, you've got some people that are a little more cosmopolitan in cities like St. Petersburg and Moscow and places like that are willing to say, hey, this Putin's not all he's cracked up to be. He's not bad. He's not good. They're basically wishy-washy on him, right? But you get outside the cities, and his approval rating is over like 80%. I mean, the pure, kind of homegrown country Russians are absolutely behind his style of governance for that country. If he was unpopular, then that would be one thing. I mean, no, let's be honest, Joe. Anytime a strongman comes into power, one of the things that they do is they control the information flow, which allows them to help control the opinions of their people. But that being said, most people can smell an authoritarian government a mile away, and it reflects, but 80% approval rating. I mean, these people not only are buying into what Putin is selling, but what he really is as well.
You look at their country's history, they're not used to not having a strong man. So to them, that's perfectly normal.
A liberal democracy is absolutely a foreign concept to the average Russian. Instead of abandoning his efforts to freeze Ukrainian conflict by doubling down on military aid in the hopes that Zelensky's forces will recapture these deposits from Russia, which could perpetuate the proxy war and thus derail his foreign policy agenda, Trump might instead try to cut a deal with Putin. One of the conditions that Trump could make for coercing Ukraine into withdrawing from at least some of the territory that Russia claims as its own might be for Putin to sell U.S. some of these minerals. Putin might agree on this depending on how far Trump is able to coerce Ukraine into withdrawing. Plus, there's a pragmatic argument in favor of this arrangement that could form a trust-building measure for the U.S. One day, allowing the EU to partially resume some Russia gas pipeline imports. Let me be honest, right, Joe. The day the ceasefire and the shelling starts will be the day that the gas pipeline reopens and Europe starts sucking at Russia's gas teat.
It'd be good for everybody. Money will be made all the way around.
Russia requires capital and technology to fully exploit the rare earth deposits that are now under its control, both of which could be provided by the U.S., with the first possibility involving a return of some seized Russian assets so long as they're invested into this endeavor. If successfully re-implemented, then this proposal could lead to more creative diplomacy of the sort that suggests at the end of this analysis here for depriving China of Russia's enormous resource wealth, which aligns with Trump's foreign policy. You know, and here's the thing, right? Enemies become not enemies when they have to work together after the conflict's over and they have something in common to their mutual benefit, right? You know, the Marshall Plan endeared the Americans to many Germans. In Japan, they almost fetishized some of the post-war ethos that was imposed upon Japan by the U.S. military governors of Japan. So definitely you can forge some long-term friendships out of, I mean, we dropped nuclear fucking bombs on Japan and they're like our closest friends in Asia, right? You know, it's close. It's neck and neck between South Korea and Japan, as far as which one would say they're the better friend to the U.S. So just because you have a difference with a country doesn't mean you can't close the gap. And you know, Joe, one of the things that both you and Stan were huge reminders of is that this is not a war between two countries. This is an internal Slavic civil war for all intents and purposes.
It is. And you've got people who used to cross back and forth between that border every day, much like the Mexican-U.S. border. You've got a lot of families that are intermingled and interbred between the two nations. It's a lot of history between them. So This is way more than just a war between nations.
Yeah, 100%. Let's see. I'll just kind of go to the last paragraph here. Far from the full military support that he expected to receive in pursuit of the recapturing of these lost deposits, he only end up with whatever cost-conscious Trump administration determines is the absolute minimum that the U.S. considers that Ukraine requires for keeping the peace. The best outcome for all those on all sides is who truly want peace, but it requires substantial will on both the U.S. and Russia's part, along with the U.S. coercing Ukraine into agreeing, none of which can be guaranteed. And, you know, Joe, ultimately, I think zero U.S. forces taking part in the security guarantees. I think if you want to put troops there, they need to be European troops.
I still believe that their goal to join NATO is a pipe dream.
Oh, yeah.
They can't meet the anti-corruption standards, so they're never going to be able to join it.
Let's see. I'm just reading some of these chats here about Japan. Let's see. Obviously, Japan is our best friend. They keep the insidious earwig nature of J-pop sequestered in the weaves, while South Korea gave us the poisonous earwig that is K-pop. I'll be honest with you, brother. I'm not a big fan of either one, though my daughters listen to both. I will say that for my ear, K-pop is more listenable than J-pop. If J-pop has something that speaks positively of it, it has more rock based than like R&B kind of pop music based. But
I'm
hey,
troubled that you know so much about it.
Joe, you live in a country for 11 years. Even if you don't consume the shit, it surrounds you. So, and you marry a Korean gal, and you have kids who embrace the half of their Korean culture. It's to be expected, Joe. I know a lot less than a lot of these old salary men do. These dirty old fucks. They know it all. They love these cute girls. All right, that's all we got for that. Let's move on to our second topic today. Is Latin America playing ball? Mexico deploys National Guard to Tijuana border after Trump Sheinbaum talks in a swift response to recent dialogues between Trump and China. So I thought this was really interesting. Let's watch this video from Real America's Voice. By the way, I endorse Real America's Voice as a news source.
Hold on, I have to support you a little bit because I was a little bit harsh with you on the K-pop thing because Marlene in the chat is right. I once took Katerina to a Jonas Brothers concert.
I mean,
no one was making you admit to that. No one made you.
That's because he felt bad. It's like that's the correct amount of crow to eat too. It's like it's self-inflicted.
There was no gun to your head. You could have just let that. You could have just let that go.
Could have just let it go, but I'm a bigger man than that. So. Carry on. Yeah, right. I ironically, you say that, but I texted my wife yesterday and said, "Why did you give me Ebola?" And she called me an idiot. So I don't know.
Just hours after former President Donald Trump held discussions with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum regarding a potential 25% tariff on Mexican goods, Mexico deployed today more than 500 guardsmen to the Tijuana border. The deployment aims to curb illegal immigration and combat the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Following the agreement, National Guard units arrived at the Tijuana border to reinforce security and address illegal crossings at open border gaps. The move is also intended to support Mexican authorities in reducing the trafficking of fentanyl and other illicit substances. As part of the negotiations, Mexico committed to securing its north border, while Sheinbaum emphasized the need for the U.S. to strengthen its own border controls to curb the flow of illegal firearms into Mexico. She pointed to the role of the U.S. weapons in fueling cartel violence. Trump posted on his social media that he had a friendly and respectful conversation with Sheinbaum. The Mexican president also described the discussions as respectful, noting that both leaders agreed on the urgency of tackling illegal migration and the fentanyl crisis. Reporting from Tijuana, Mexico, I'm Oscar Blue for Real America's Voice News. Stay safe.
Hey, hold on. Pause it. Is that dude seriously taking his baby blue rolling bag on deployment with him? Seriously?
Yeah. You deploy with the army you got, not the one you want. He's got his carry-on. Will this fit in the overhead?
No. Go back further. It's the guy right behind the dude, right there. The baby blue.
Oh, the one. Well, you got you talk about the suitcase right there. Yeah. But
bro, it's the only one my wife would let me take. Yeah, because she wants it gone.
Talk about losing cool points.
Yeah, right. That's all you needed to know about the Mexican Guardia Nacional, right there.
Yeah, so I thought this was really interesting. So after the 1 month freeze, Mexico claims it could convert Trump's tariffs in a month. Mexico's economy minister, Marcelo Ebrard, insists a month is more than enough to strike a deal with the U.S. before Trump's 25% tariffs take effect. The tariffs aimed at pushing Mexico and Canada to crack down on drug trafficking, illegal immigration, were delayed by a month after the Mexican President Sheinbaum's direct call with Trump. He framed it as a great political success and claimed Mexico is now from a stronger position. I mean, if bent over a barrel is a strong position, you know.
So,
Okay.
I'll be honest, those guns that the cartels have aren't coming from U.S. markets, right? They're getting them elsewhere. They're getting
Not
them
the way
from
they used to,
Venezuela.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And what rifle is it that the Guardia Nacional was carrying? Because those look sketchy.
Yeah, that's that Mexican assault rifle, and it does look sketchy. Mexican. I'm trying to remember what the name of that suck. The
pulling it up right now.
FX05.
Yeah.
FX05. If you put, actually, watch your. If actually, I got a picture of it up here right now.
The turquoise serpent. Oh, maybe that's why the guy had a turquoise bag.
So it looks like a G36 kind of had improper relations with a Nerf gun.
Yeah, it's a 5.56.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's a fact, but in the background though they got the G3, the G3 marksman rifle there in the background. So they do have some German iron. They also have Galils. Or no, is it Colombia has the Galils? I can't remember.
I don't know. I know that Mexico used to have a lot of the G3s.
Yeah. The heck. So clearly, the Heckler and Koch thing is definitely a deal. Yeah. So you've got these guys. Yeah, they look like G36s. Is what they look like, or maybe like you remember the XM8 kind of looks a little like that too. Yeah, this stock looks fugly.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ! It's got a serpent on it.
Well, it's called the turquoise serpent. So
the turquoise serpent, right? They weren't lying.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, future conflict. You out there may need to know this weapon. You may see more of it in the future, and you just need to make sure you pass it by on
The
that.
best thing to do with it after you cap the Mexicans who had them is take the ammo and throw away the rifle. So, or you trade them to someone else.
They claim that the Army replicated the design of the G36 assault rifle. He got sued by HK. That's funny. All right. Let us move on. Trump and Rubio's. So this is another kind of head. First it was a head scratcher, but then it kind of makes sense. And it kind of. So anyway, let me read this story about it here. Trump and Rubio's prison deal. What was your initial impression when you heard about this, Joe?
I'm sorry?
The prison deal, the El Salvadoran prison deal. What was your? Because we reported about this, the kind of the talk about this originally. That was like, oh well, we'll take some of your criminal aliens down here if they can't go to like say wherever.
I think that Gitmo was a better idea. This feeds into the left's idea that he's a strong man who loves strong men. Because Nayib Bukele used armed force to get everything he did justified. He locked his Congress in the building and forced them at gunpoint to sign new laws to make what he did legal. I'm not saying it wasn't necessary, but I'm saying that you're giving ammunition to the left to kind of attack this. But on the flip side, as I said the first time that this came up, Bukele is taking a big risk here. He has it under control in his country. Now he's bringing in violent gangsters from all over the world into his country, and they all speak Spanish. So he's at risk of having a bigger gang organization in his own country.
All right, let me read a little bit of this here. Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have secured a historic agreement with El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele that will allow the U.S. to deport violent criminals, regardless of nationality, to serve their sentences in El Salvador's high-security mega prison. This bold initiative will cut prison costs, reduce overcrowding, and enhance public safety by removing dangerous criminals from the U.S. soil. Critics argue that the U.S. cannot deport American citizens, but federal law provides clear pathways for this policy to be implemented legally. Under 8 USC 1227, lawful permanent residents can be deported for aggravated felonies, drug offenses, and crimes with moral turpitude. 8 USC 1481 allows the revocation of citizenship for naturalized citizens who engaged in terrorism, treason, or fraud in obtaining their status, meaning gang members who concealed their affiliations, such as MS-13 or Tren de Aragua, could be stripped of citizenship and removed. Additionally, the International Prison Transfer Program already allows for foreign nationals convicted in the U.S. to serve sentences in their home countries. This new agreement expands the concept by allowing El Salvador to house those criminals from any nation, including those who the U.S. wants to remove. Bukele has also transformed El Salvador into one of the world's deadliest nations into the safest, jailing over 83,000 gang members in a 40,000 inmate mega prison. So we've kind of talked about this other stuff before. It's mostly background, but I thought that was interesting. Like, it actually provides the legal framework for how this could work. Now, he's not talking about, like, me and you, Joe, we couldn't get, legally put in one of these El Salvador prisons. But, let's say you got somebody who came from Venezuela, got citizenship, did not disclose that they were a gang member, then their citizenship could be revoked, and then they could be sent to this prison to serve a term, and then deported after the fact back to Venezuela. So it's interesting. I tend to agree with you, Joe. The optics are a little strongman,
especially when you know a thing or two about Bukele's father and the rest of his family history and affiliations. Yeah. So,
all right. What's your take on Rubio and how he's done as a Secretary of State thus far?
I mean, he's done a great job of implementing Trump's policies.
Right, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Pretty well. So,
as long as he keeps whatever crazy ideas he has locked inside of his head and stays in his lane and executes the policies that Trump is advocating for, then, so far, so good. And it's kind of the same that I would expect from RFK Jr., right? RFK Jr., keep your crazy gun control ideas to yourself. But when it comes to science and medicine and all that kind of stuff, go forth and do great things, but stay in your fucking lane. All right. Let's move on to the next one. So Panama Canal, we had our Secretary of State went down there, and Panama was talking tough, and he went down there, and all of a sudden he wasn't talking tough anymore. Does Rubio speak Spanish?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he did. China's foreign ministry said on Wednesday it lodged a complaint. Well, I guess I should back up. So essentially, Panama said, "Oh yes, you're right, Marco Rubio. We will cancel our participation in the the Belt and Road Initiative, and we will not renew the leases that the Chinese companies have." And I think these all come up in like 2028 or something like that. So China has found themselves on the outs as far as the future goes. Now, anything could happen. So we'll watch this space. But I thought this was a positive development. China's foreign ministry said on Wednesday that it lodged complaints with the United States over irresponsible remarks regarding the Panama Canal and the attacks on China's cooperation with Panama over the canal. Currently, the cooperation between China and Panama under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative is proceeding normally, the ministry spokesperson told a press briefing when asked about Panama's decision to let its involvement in the infrastructure plan expire. We hope the relevant parties will remain confident, but not be influenced by external interference and make the right decisions based on the overall bilateral relationship and the long-term interest of both the people of both countries. Basically, I get the feeling that that China was taken a bit by surprise. Now, it shouldn't be a surprise. just like we shouldn't be surprised when, say, Vietnam decides it's okay, we're not going to be an American ally. We're going to stay neutral and continue to trade with China. Well, because they're right in fucking China's backyard, right? It would make sense that they would bend the knee. And this is exactly the reason why I think you're going to see countries like Panama bend the knee to the Trump administration, because Uncle Sam is just right across the Gulf of America from Panama. I just had to say it, so this makes sense, and I think China feels like, wait a second, what the fuck just happened? We have a deal. Anyway.
Well, they thought they had a deal. So.
Well, but were you surprised I guess I wasn't surprised how quickly Panama rolled over after Colombia rolled over within like 5 hours on that trade war. But were you surprised at all about Panama's concessions? I know Panama's near and dear to your heart, so I'm curious what your take on it was.
No, I'm not surprised, because I guarantee you it came with some money to help them with infrastructure on both ends that China probably wasn't as willing to give.
Right.
But we kind of gloss over it because we want to rah-rah Trump quite a bit. He did make some things saying that the canal remains Panamanian and it's not U.S. controlled, but the U.S. Navy can have free passage. So it wasn't quite the complete surrender, but they did beat the Chinese out. So,
well, in all fairness, right? Like, in the fever dream of what right should look like, I think we should control the Panama Canal Zone. Honestly, outright, it should be U.S. territory. That being said, even Trump, I don't know that was ever in the cards for him to take it over. But a compliant Panama firmly in the U.S. kind of sphere of influence that we can kind of control and make sure that they're doing our bidding down there is about as good a scenario that is a little more realistic, I think. It's not to say that, 2 years from now we couldn't be invading Panama, but I don't really see that in the cards. Oh, Watcher, what's your kind of take on Panama?
That it's fantastic to see China getting kicked out of it if that indeed goes through, but that's a lot of time, and all they have to say now is just pay lip service to it because they've already got the contracts in place. So, like
I said, it could be a very different world in 2027.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly strategically important, and I can't believe we ever let it go in the first place. That's what I have to say about Panama.
I saw a T-shirt that I really liked. It said, "I survived the 2025 global trade war from 3 February 25 to 3 February 25."
Nice.
I mean, yeah. Well, what was it? Watcher, was that you that said,
oh, yeah.
Dad,
what did you do? Dad, what did you do during the 2-hour trade war of 2025? Oh, I ship posted memes. Legendary.
Exactly right. All right. What's up next? Okay, so this last one is the last story there after this one. Watcher, we're going to do that on Friday, so you don't have to pull that one up. So this will be the last story. So this is not Central America, but let's be honest, USAID was handing money out like a fucking drunk sailor to Central and South America. So it might as well be part of Latin America stories. The website from the U.S. U.S. Agency for International Development, that's USAID, went dark over the weekend, and employees were put on leave. Like all of the employees, except for mission essential and critical leadership, were all put on basically paid leave, essentially, or work from home. Let's see, because they were the largest disperser of U.S. foreign aid. The remarks were made by Musk during a live stream discussing work on the government task force, the so-called Department of Government Efficiency that he was announced to be leading by the president Media reports, meanwhile, that USAID could be absorbed into the State Department, while many of the projects it supports for health to infrastructure, disaster relief program would be slashed significantly. USAID spending equals less than 1% of the federal budget. But as Statista's Catherine Buchholz reports, USAID is the biggest dispenser of U.S. foreign aid, according to foreign website foreignassistance.gov. It dispersed almost $44 billion in fiscal year of 2023, with $16 billion going to Ukraine. So this next, if you look at this chart right below, I mean, this shows you where your money is going. And let me be honest, I don't know if anybody in my chat wants any of their fucking money going to any of these countries. So if you just scroll down a little bit, Watcher. There we go. Where is US aid going? So basically the number one recipient was Ukraine. This is in 2023. So that's what this represents, FY23. $16 billion. More than $16 billion. Ethiopia got $1.6 billion. Jordan got $1.1 billion. Afghanistan got $1 billion. Somalia got $1 billion. The DRC got $936 million. Syria, in 2023, Syria got $895 million. Nigeria got $824 million. Yemen, $812. South Sudan, $740. I mean, Joe, this is literally like all the countries that don't need a fucking dime of our money are these countries right here.
Correct. And yet we still give it to them, right?
Well, the irony is that it wasn't like you have just like a big account with, say, Somalia, right? You know, they may have some sort of gender equity program for female lesbian pirates in order to make sure that they're equally represented in Davy Jones' locker after the Ambrose security guys fill their boats full of holes. You know, and that may be like $1 million grant for that program. Well, what does that mean? That means $100,000 goes to lesbian pirates in the Gulf of Aden, and the rest of that goes into the pockets of grant administrators who have New York City apartments and living a fucking high life, on the government tit that they thought was never going to end. And, if I'm honest, Joe, the real reason that the left right now is freaking out is because all their fucking money has just gone poof. Their influence, everything. I mean, what did you notice about this whole USAID thing? What kind of drew your kind of attention on this?
Nothing. This is exactly what I expected. USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy are fronts for the CIA spending money to governments, and sometimes toppling our own, and ensuring democratic or progressive control of it.
The irony is that USAID has worked counter to the State Department and US and DOD directives in various different countries around the world. Like literally,
did I not say CIA?
No. What I'm saying though is that it went beyond like just the covert stuff to the out of control do-gooders. These like I said, the gender studies majors and things like that, giving absolute ridiculous amounts of money. Because you're right, there absolutely were covert operations being run through USAID, but there were also a lot of just absolute wastes of money.
So think about this. Think about this. If you're part of the military-industrial complex, we've invaded Afghanistan. We rolled them over literally in a month, right? And we start making inroads and progress. What's the best way to derail that to ensure ongoing conflict and ongoing military-industrial complex spending? Let's start doing gender studies in Afghanistan.
Social chaos.
Conflict started up, right?
Yeah.
It's just part of the military-industrial complex. Always has been.
Yeah, it's the whole stir the pot kind of mentality that you have, because we may end this war, but we need to foment the next one so that we've got a continuous supply of conflict to send weapons and money into. And but here's the bottom line is that this is entirely USAID is nothing but a giant money laundering operation for the rich, the woke, and the people who absolutely don't deserve any of this money. All right. Guys, that's all I got for today. A short show, hour and 36 minutes. Joe, we got this protest today, the 50 states, 50 cities, 1 day protest. What do you think? What are you expecting out of it?
Well, I expect it to turn out some numbers, but not as many as they want, because I think there's a lot of fatigue on the left, but they are starting to motivate and starting to get out there. So I really don't know. We will see. We'll see some violence, I think, in some of the places like California, Arizona, some of the areas where it's really impacting things. But it'd be interesting to see if they all of a sudden don't have matching signs because USAID is not paying for them.
Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those kind of things where, you're not going to get the turnout that you would when the money funnel was going back in 2020. The USAID was giving all that foreign aid to stack bricks in Atlanta on corners and things like that.
Yeah.
But Joe, I think in the stronghold areas, like Southern California, I think you're going to see pretty big turnouts. I think Texas, you might see some numbers. New Mexico, Arizona, in places where the weather's a little fairer, I think will encourage turnout. That you also have a higher number of people who are connected to the whole illegal immigration kind of experience, living in those areas. Expect to see counter protests. I mean, we've seen, we saw that lady going down the street playing Ice Ice Baby to all the, the anti-ICE protesters. So, you're going to have some friction out there, right? And when you have two people who disagree vehemently, you never know what kind of conflict can come out of it.
Start looking at leftist social media and see what they're talking about. They're talking about actual violence, and you need to pay attention to that. And I know everyone likes to laugh about that, but an amateur kills you just as dead as a professional. So,
yeah. All right. Let us, Watcher, what's your kind of thought on the week?
Yeah, I would say I think the left is probably going to be embarrassed by the 50 state capitol protest today, but I think in the long run, they're whipping up a bunch of lone wolf actors, I guess is what we can say. If you check out Reddit, they're frothing, and I mean that in a way that I've not ever meant it before. They're being worked up to violence by their handlers, whoever manages the Reddit bot network. And that needs to get taken care of fast, because it's going to spin out of hand.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think Joe, you're right. I think they're going to be disappointed on the total numbers of people turn out, but I think you'll see some big numbers in some of the southern states, and I think there's a very good chance that you might see some violence break out. And I don't know what that looks like. It could be property damage type stuff, but I think it would be personal conflicts. And you saw the protesters in LA blocking a freeway, and several people had to kind of jump out of the way as motor vehicles decided, hey, we're getting through this. You're not gonna trap me, behind your protests. So all it takes is one person decided, kind of panicking and driving essentially through a giant crowd of people, and all of a sudden it's a call to arms to protect, our, Mexican Americans or whatever.
Yep.
Gentlemen, that's all I got for today. Chat, you were awesome. Joe, Watcher, thank you for being here as always. I will say that we will be back on Friday, same time, same place. We might have a couple guests, so tune in. I think you'll enjoy it. If you can, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, let people know, everybody you know there on social media, know that you're getting good stuff over here on the Council on Future Conflict. And as always, gentlemen, stay safe.